Welcome to Congressman Chris Deluzio's Telephone Town Hall. This event is a chance to share your thoughts with Congressman Deluzio. Thank you for joining us. I'll be your moderator for this evening's Telephone Town Hall, which is scheduled from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Congressman Deluzio is a Navy and Iraq War veteran, worked on voting rights and cybersecurity as a lawyer, and organized a union with the steelworkers. And now he proudly represents Pennsylvania's 17th Congressional District and all of you. We'll get started in just a few minutes. This live interactive event is all about giving you, Congressman Deluzio's constituents, the chance to ask questions about the issues you care about to the Congressman. To submit your question anytime during the event through the phone, please press *3. Participants streaming the event online can type their question below the streaming player. We can't get to all the questions, but we will get to as many as we can. After pressing *3, you will relay your question to a staff member, and they will record your name, hometown, and your question to put it into the queue for the Congressman to answer. Again, submit your questions by pressing *3 to speak with a staff member, and leave your question for Congressman Deluzio. For those of you just joining us, welcome. You're here at the start of Congressman Chris Deluzio's Telephone Town Hall. We'll get started soon. Along with asking questions, you can subscribe to Representative Deluzio's e-newsletter by pressing *6. Again, to subscribe to the Congressman's e-newsletter, you can press *6 to leave your email and get subscribed. We're glad you're joining Congressman Chris Deluzio's Telephone Town Hall. We'll give people a few more minutes to join the call with the Congressman. For those just joining, if you want to ask Congressman Deluzio a question, please press *3 to submit your question. That's *3 to ask a question. To start, Congressman Deluzio has a poll question to better understand who's joining us tonight. Please use the keypad on your phone to answer the following poll question. Are you a veteran, or do you have a veteran in your close family? Press 1 for yes, I am a veteran myself, or have a veteran in my family, or press 2 for no, I am not, and my family does not include veterans. Thank you all for participating in this poll question on Congressman Deluzio's Telephone Town Hall. I'll share the results of the poll question after we take some more questions, so please keep submitting yours to the Q&A by pressing *3. Participants streaming the event online at deluzio.house.gov/live can type their question below the streaming player. While it is not possible to get to everyone's question, we will get to as many as possible, so please stay on the line to hear if your question is answered. You can listen to the audio stream of this event on Congressman Deluzio's Facebook page or at deluzio.house.gov/live. Now, I'd like to invite Congressman Chris Deluzio to give some opening remarks before we get to answering your question. Congressman, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and hi, everybody. I just got back to Washington yesterday after busy August at home. Now that Congress is back in session, I'm down here taking votes, and in fact, I think we've got votes later tonight. I want to hear more from all of you, share some updates on what's going on in Washington and the Congress. It looks like a lot of folks are interested. I'll share the numbers when I've got them, how many folks have signed on, but thanks for taking the time tonight to join. Really appreciate it. If you don't know much about me, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in Thornburg in Allegheny County. I was a senior at Canevin in high school when the 9/11 attacks happened, and that really drove me and so many others I know to serve and wear the uniform. I went off to the Naval Academy and got to have the privilege of serve as an officer in the Navy. I did deployments at sea. I did a deployment in Iraq. Really proud of the folks I served with. I'm now very proud to be a husband and a dad of 4 young kids growing up here in Western PA. They're learning to love our teams, even the Pirates, which I'm sorry for them about that. But my life post-military, I got to go to law school, became a lawyer. I've worked on cybersecurity and voting rights issues. I was proud to organize alongside the steelworkers. And since my election in 2022, it's been my great honor to represent all of us, to serve us in the U.S. House and Congress. And so with that, let's get right to some of the big issues and what I'm doing to tackle them and get to work. I just found out from my team we got nearly 8,000 folks on right now. That's great. Thanks for coming on. But let's start at the top of the list here with lowering costs. I hear it every day, many times a day sometimes. High costs are really, really hammering folks. It's tough out there. And look, making it impossible for a lot of people to achieve the American dream, that has got to be a top priority, not just of mine, but our government. And I think there are a bunch of forces, but two really big ones right now that are keeping the drive costs up. Number one, I think Donald Trump's reckless and chaotic trade policy is really creating uncertainty. It's making it hard for businesses to plan. It's raising cost for both customers and small businesses, especially smaller businesses. And it's given big corporations cover to take advantage here and price gouge folks. The other second big force, I talk about this corporate power, this consolidation, monopolies, abusing their market power, market share to rip all of us off, charging more and giving us less choice and worse quality, and really jamming small businesses especially. And so I don't think any government is going to make life more affordable if you aren't tackling those two forces. Well, not just those, but those two have to be part of what you're doing. I'll tell you what I'm doing. I've been putting forward a vision for a better trade industrial policy that can supercharge American manufacturing, create more solid jobs without the chaos and the confusion that this administration has been causing and pushing. That's really hurt a lot of workers and businesses and all of us as consumers. I voted no on President Trump's and D.C. Republicans' new budget law, which is going to raise costs on things like health care, utilities, electric bills, and more, all while jacking up the debt to pay for tax giveaways to some of the richest and most powerful people and corporations ever. And I'm taking the fight to monopolies and the corporate power that's really been ripping us off. I'll give you an example. I'm looking into policy options. I've been digging in, working on a report to bring down skyrocketing electric bills, your utility bills. That includes digging into the big spring storm outages. We did a survey. We put out some work my team's been working on, and more to come there, because it's got to be an all of government, not just federal government response. And I hope what you have picked up and learned about me is I'm not afraid to take on these corporate monopolists. And look, I'm also not afraid and have been fighting against this administration's overreach. And I'll tell you one big high-profile area we've seen it is ICE activity in western Pennsylvania and across the country. And let me be clear, right, if you're someone who came into this country against the law, you've committed violent crimes, you put the public in danger, then you shouldn't get to stay here. I think most Americans agree with that. But I also think most Americans don't want law-abiding people disappeared and don't want families ripped apart. And I'll be blunt, we don't have clarity on what's actually happening and what ICE is doing, because this administration has refused to answer my basic questions about these activities in our area in western Pennsylvania. They've ignored requests from my team, from me directly, inquiries for months. I've been demanding accountability. I'm going to continue to pound until we get answers, just as I would with any president or any administration. I think this lack of transparency and refusal to cooperate is unacceptable. And again, this is basic congressional oversight, which I am duty-bound under the Constitution to do. I take the same oath of any member of Congress, the same one I took when I was in the military. And my job now is oversight of our government. This is a big part of it. Another fight that I'm in for as long and hard as it takes is against corruption. You know, I think about the swampy self-dealing that happens in Washington, whether it's President Trump and his family and their crypto ventures, whether it's people trading stocks in Congress, whether it's the corporate money in our politics, rigging the system against people. I don't like any of it. It has to stop. I don't care the party. I think it's simple. Our government should be focused on the common good. No politician should be looking to line their pockets in their public office. And that's why we need a congressional stock trading ban, period. I'm hopeful there's actually some momentum there to get that done. We should. And I'll tell you what else. I don't think protecting pedophiles or abusers because they're rich and powerful is anything but corrupt. It is corrupt. And I'm calling on this administration to finally release the full Epstein files. The American people, all of us, I think we need the truth. And look, there's a lot in our country, and certainly where I am right now in Washington, that divides us. I'm not naive about that, but I try to fight hard for western Pennsylvania no matter what. And so wherever I can, wherever I need to, I work with folks to get stuff done for us, including in our delegation, our Pennsylvania congressional delegation, to get things that we need at home. Give you some examples. I worked with a Republican colleague of mine from our region, Congressman Reschenthaler, to get almost $184 million in federal funding in the most recent committee, one of the committee-passed spending bills. That's all about improving and finally modernizing the Montgomery Locks and Dam on the Upper Ohio River in Beaver County. It's a huge project, big shot in the arm for our region's economy. It'll support thousands of jobs, both construction and long-term, and I've done work to make sure those will be good-paying union jobs. Just the other week, I held a bipartisan roundtable discussion with a state senator, teachers, parents, a student, talking about how we can get addictive and distracting smartphones out of classrooms in K-12 schools. I think it's a really important issue that a lot of parents I know are worried about. And of course, I never fail to bring this one up. I'm still working hard to pass my Railway Safety Act. We got to get that done to make rail safer for communities like ours all across the country. So look, there's a lot going on. As I said, in D.C., at home in Western Pennsylvania, I'm working hard for all of us so that everyone who's working hard can earn their American dream. I think that's what this is all about, so our government's got to be doing. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you, looking forward to taking your questions. Thank you. Stop there.
Thank you, Congressman. We'll go ahead and get started with our first question. This question comes from Maureen, who's joining us from Braddock Hills. She says, it's terrible that 2 men died in the Clairton plant explosion. Are you or other representatives doing anything to protect the guys still on the job?
Absolutely. And look, a horrible reminder that there are important jobs that people do, people in our part of the world do, that are dangerous, that put you at risk. And to see those two men die, others be injured, was just a brutal reminder of how dangerous so many jobs can be. And highlights for me why you don't just trust companies to say they're going to protect workers out of the goodness of their hearts. We need firm rules. We need real accountability. We need safety measures. I think a union on the job is an important thing that can help enforce those safety rules. I will tell you that the Chemical Safety Board, maybe you've never heard of it, it is a body, a federal body that investigates accidents exactly like this. I've met with leadership of the Chemical Safety Board. They are investigating what happened in Clairton. And I bring that up. Number one, that investigation has to run its course. But it's important to understand something that's happened here. The White House, in their proposed budget, they proposed zeroing out the Chemical Safety Board's budget. Zeroing it. They would not exist or function. And those are the people, public servants, who are charged with investigating that horrible accident. I think it's foolish and reckless to defund something like the Chemical Safety Board. They have a budget of just $14 or so million. They've got less than 50 staff as it is, already having to make a lot of recommendations and investigate really brutal accidents like the one in Clairton. So I'm working to make sure they've got full funding to actually investigate this, to find out what happened. So number one, no other workers have to suffer that kind of accident again, and so that we can know whether there are changes in the law, whether the company did its duty to protect those workers. And it's not just the Chemical Safety Board. Take OSHA. I'm sure folks have heard of OSHA that does a lot to enforce workplace safety. And the White House here has proposed cutting $50 million from OSHA's budget for workplace safety inspections. They already don't have enough staff to inspect. And I think last year they had one inspector for something like 85,000 workers. That's not enough. It would take the agency more than a century to inspect every workplace. And I could go on and on about these kinds of cuts and actions that I think are anti-worker. It's anti-safety. Certainly, Western Pennsylvania communities near a place like Clairton, I know, felt fear and danger about what happened that day. And again, I don't think you can pay lip service to worrying about safety and worrying about communities and workers when you're taking away the money from the very parts of our government that do important work to keep them safe. So I'm going to do everything I can. I know Governor Shapiro is committed to making sure the investigation of what happened at Clairton, he sees it through. I'm committed to help him on the federal side. Anything he needs for our Commonwealth to get that done.
Great. Thank you, Congressman, and thank you, Maureen, for the question. Thank you to everyone who has sent in their questions so far. If you'd like to submit a question, please press *3 on your keypad. Again, that's *3 on your keypad. I'd like to quickly share the results of the poll question many of you answered regarding being a veteran or having one in your family. We have 48% on the call tonight who are veterans or have one in their family, and 52 who are not or do not. I would like to thank you for participating. I'll go ahead and read our second poll question. That'll be up shortly. What is one issue you want to hear more about in today's telephone town hall with the congressman? Again, what is one issue you want to hear about more in today's telephone town hall? Press 1 for the economy, costs, and jobs. Press 2 for corruption and trust in government. Press 3 for civil rights and public safety. Press 4 for healthcare. Press 5 for education. Press 6 for immigration. Press 7 for foreign affairs and defense. And press 8 for other. Again, that's 1 for the economy, costs, and jobs. 2 for corruption and trust in government. 3 for civil rights and public safety. 4 for healthcare. 5 for education. 6 for immigration. 7 for foreign affairs and defense. And 8 for anything else. Now it's time to get back to your questions. We'll take as many questions as we can in tonight's telephone town hall. Our next question comes from John from Roth, who asks, you say you want to ban stock trading under Trump, but Pelosi has been getting rich off of it for decades. Why did you not have a problem with it then?
John, I've got a problem with anybody in Congress using the information that we learn in this job to get rich trading stocks, period. I've been calling on a ban or calling for a ban since I got to Congress. My first term, President Biden was the president, a Democrat. Now it's President Trump, a Republican. I don't really care. I think corruption is nasty down here. I think we got to ban congressional stock trading. I don't think it belongs to any particular party in our country's history. And look, I didn't like Joe Biden pardoning his son. I don't like my colleagues getting rich off of sensitive information in the jobs. I don't think Donald Trump should launch a meme coin, use his office to promote scammy businesses with his family. I think it's all swampy crap, to be blunt. Sorry for the language. But wherever I see this kind of corruption, I'm going to do what I can to fight it. I think there's a bigger kind of corruption, or a different kind of corruption might be the way to say it, in our politics, and we need campaign finance reform. What do I mean by that? When you see ads in a lot of campaigns, candidates running for office, oftentimes not even the candidates buying these ads, where they have to disclose their donors and are subject to limits and rules. It's super PACs that can raise unlimited money, sometimes without disclosing their donors. Corporations and others can put as much money as they want. And that's because of a ruling our Supreme Court issued. It's called Citizens United some time ago. That opened the floodgates there. I think it distorts and corrupts our politics. I support a bill to amend the Constitution to fix this. I think the super PACs, you see them, they really can spend in all of these races, whether it's, as I said, big, powerful corporations or other interest groups, you name it. They can surge dark money into our elections. I'm co-sponsoring a bill that would limit super PACs to $5,000 per year contributions, effectively making them the same as other kinds of organizations and candidates and the like. They have to actually disclose and be limited on what they can raise. My colleague in the Pennsylvania's 12th District, Representative Lee, has that bill, and I co-sponsor it. I think it's part of what we've got to do to fix just the corruption of all this money that runs through our politics. And I think it's related to the kind of corruption, whether it's congressional stock trading, people in the executive branch abusing their power in their offices. I think it all goes to the heart of trust in government, which we have to rebuild. I don't think most folks look and think it's healthy for the country for people to not have trust in the democracy. If you believe in our ability to govern ourselves, as I do deeply, if you believe that we're a good and decent people who can, again, form a government of, by, and for us, then you got to worry about trust in government. I think we got to go at the heart of this corruption and beat it back.
Thank you, John, for the question, and thank you, Congressman, for that. Our next question comes from Sue, who joins us from Reserve. She says, I'm retired. I live off Social Security and savings. I'm about to have to cut my pills in half because they are too expensive for me to afford and refill monthly. This is not how it should be. Any thoughts on that, Congressman?
I agree. It's not how it should be. I mean, look, I think in this country we expect, and we should have a system that says after a lifetime of hard work, you should be able to retire with dignity. And having to ration medicine, my goodness. I talk about, and we could talk about Social Security, and we'll talk about Medicare, but let's just start with the basic value that in a country like the United States of America today, you ought to be able to earn and have a decent retirement. Part of that is shoring up Social Security for certainly people who today receive benefits, but for all of us, right, who are paying in and expect those benefits to be there, and they should be. I mean, I'm on a bunch of bills that would strengthen Social Security and strengthen the benefits of Social Security for a long time. Social Security 2100 Act, Social Security Expansion Act. Those bills are all about extending the solvency of Social Security. A big part of this is to say that someone who makes $1 billion shouldn't be paying the same in a Social Security as someone who makes $180,000, which is what the law is now. And so I think it's outrageous that we're talking about Social Security being at risk when you've got someone who makes literally $1 billion not paying any more into the program than someone who makes $180,000. I've been on bills to keep our field offices open and more, and I've been worried about what the Doge group, and Elon Musk, when he was in the government, were doing to put people's information at risk. And we've now learned that they were going through the government and created a live copy of Social Security information that put the personal information of hundreds of millions of Americans at risk of being hacked or compromised. So there's a lot we got to do to protect Social Security. And let's go direct to the drug cost point, when we have to lower cost. There was a bill that President Biden signed a couple years ago that put some caps in Medicare on out-of-pocket costs. It gave the government more power to negotiate with these drug companies, to put limits, as I said, on out-of-pocket costs. But there's also a problem that's not just within Medicare. There's a problem in our prescription drug system in this country. And PBMs, maybe you've heard of them, pharmacy benefit managers. These are corporate middlemen. They are a big problem. They're ripping people off in a real way. They're really hurting our pharmacies in general, and certainly independent pharmacies. And I talk about these guys who have all this power. Use a term called vertical integration. What do I mean by that? That's the same big corporation owning multiple parts of an industry, right? So these pharmacy benefit managers are middlemen, but some of these corporations also own insurance companies. They might own, and they often own, a mail order pharmacy, maybe brick and mortar chain pharmacies. Maybe they even have medical practices. And 3 of those 4 largest PBMs, again, they're also owned by corporations or organizations or entities that also own a health insurer. They process something like 80% of all prescription claims, and they are using that power to squeeze our independent pharmacists. They are steering drugs to their preferred mail pharmacies. They're under-reimbursing these independent pharmacists and threatening to take them out of their networks, and we're all paying for it with worse service, with more expensive drugs. It's a real problem. And look, that's before we're even getting into insurance problems. We know premiums have been a ripoff for those who are lucky enough to be able to afford it and have it. But these private insurance companies have every incentive to deny claims for care that you need, that you've earned. We know that there's evidence of some of these companies using AI to deny claims. Anyone who's ever been on the phone dealing with an insurance company, I'm sure, can tell you what a pain in the neck it is to get somebody on the phone to make your case, to fight back against a lousy decision on benefits. There's now reports of this administration pushing for prior authorization in Medicare. There's a pilot of that's already happening in Medicare Advantage in some places. These are real problems that are all leading to life being more expensive and medicine and healthcare being more of a ripoff that we got to fix. I'm on a bunch of bills to push back on this stuff on the healthcare side to try to get us to a more sane healthcare system where you aren't risking financial ruin. God forbid you get sick. And I'm sure we can talk about it more then, but there's a lot we got to do to shore up healthcare and bring down costs for folks. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Congressman. Again, to everyone, as a reminder, if you would like to ask a question on tonight's call, you could press *3 at any time. And if you would like to join the Congressman's e-newsletter, You can press *6. Our next question comes from Clark, who submitted a question online. Clark says, services for veterans benefits have been impacted by staffing cuts. What can you do to help reverse this?
Well, I think Clark it was your name. Clark, look, I'm in this with you. I'm a veteran. I get my health care at the VA in Pittsburgh. I really appreciate the job those folks do, and I'm always going to push them to do better. But I'll be clear here, and I think I have been for quite a while. I think what the Trump administration is doing is making things worse. I'm going to fight tooth and nail to protect and support our local VA to make sure they got the funding they need, the staffing they need. I think what the Trump administration has been doing has been to try to privatize the VA to send my fellow veterans and me out for more expensive care, where we don't have the kind of oversight and coordination that happens in the VA. And listen, there's a place and a time where if you've got to get care in the community because of a certain need, or maybe the VA can't meet it, or there's a long wait or something, that's fine. But the wait time stories we're hearing from my fellow veterans who are getting farmed out, especially in more rural parts of our community or beyond, it's bad stuff. There's not some surplus of doctors and hospitals in the more rural parts of Pennsylvania or anywhere who can meet the need if the VA gets gutted here. And, I'll tell you, the data here is pretty clear. Something like a little more than three-quarters of VA hospitals got a 4 or 5-star rating when the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services rated them. Only about 35, a little less than 40% of hospitals nationwide got those ratings. So I know that veterans, my fellow veterans, have earned the best VA we can get them. And this is about paying the cost of war. And you got politicians who sent guys like me and my generation off to serve in places like Iraq, who sent generations before us, who now want to count pennies. I think it's outrageous. And remember, if you ask people around here in our part of the world, Democrat or Republican, independent, you name it, if you ask, should we fund the VA so veterans have decent and good health care, they'll say absolutely. And look, when I got word that VA Pittsburgh canceled its town hall, I immediately fired off a letter finding out why that happened. I'm glad to report that it's coming back, the town hall tour. There's a Stop in Beaver County plan, and we'll share the information. But part of why there's such a demand for those questions is because of what you asked, what's going on with staffing. VA in Pittsburgh is projecting around 170 or so employees lost net, I think, by the end of the year. They've admitted that medical staff have had to take on more administrative burden because of the firings of support staff. That distracts from medical care for veterans. And I'm going to keep asking those questions. And again, we'll put out the word on the town hall tour there. The date I do have for Beaver County and Baden is September 12th, and I'll make sure my team and I put that on social media. But I'm going to keep asking questions. Again, I don't think this is a complicated issue for us here in Western PA. We expect the VA to have the resources, to have the staffing they need, so those folks can take care of my fellow veterans who have earned our care.
Thank you, Congressman. Our next question comes from Maureen, who joins us from Pittsburgh. She has 2 questions. First, she says, my brother was shot and killed in Pittsburgh. What is your stance on gun regulations? Secondly, what are you going to do to release the Epstein files?
Well, I'm so sorry to hear about your brother. I mean, that's just horrible. And look, I don't think any of us should accept that losing lives to gun violence is something we should just say is a normal part of life in this country. It shouldn't be. You or no one else should have to live through what I can only imagine that was like. I'm thinking more recently we had the shooting in Minnesota of those kids at Mass. It's just horrible. We should not accept this as normal. It should not be acceptable to us. And I know there's often this discussion of, we offer up thoughts and prayers, and some people criticize that. I don't criticize that. We should offer up thoughts and prayers. We should back that up with action. I've been fighting as hard as I can in Washington to actually do something to keep our community safe. I will tell you, I carried a guns and uniform in some dangerous places. My friends and I had the best training in the world in the military, the American military, and I know as well as anyone that we need some common sense reforms that can and I know will save lives. I think it's pretty outrageous that an 18-year-old can, with no training, get essentially the same kind of gun or guns that I had in Iraq. I'm a dad. I also know that we got to end this insanity of having the fear that gun violence can come for our kids at school, at mass, the grocery store, you name it. And look, I'm a member of this gun violence prevention task force here in the Congress. We're working on bills and measures that can save lives. I'm a co-sponsor. I support the Bipartisan Background Checks Act that says you got to have, with a firearm sale, a gun sale, a violent history check to keep guns out of the hands of violent people. I've been working on a bill on the veteran side to get funding for a program to get lock boxes to veterans who want them, which again is something we know that can save lives, especially suicide. And I don't think the problem is that there's some question about what we can do to save lives. The problem is that politicians lack the courage to do something about it. I'm not one of those people, but I'm pretty frustrated with the people I see in Washington who do nothing, who are more afraid of the gun lobby than they are of parents worried about losing kids, or someone like you, Ms. Taylor, who lost someone. And so I think we got to get weapons of war off our streets. We got to have some common sense, gun safety. And the other part of your question, I believe, was on the Epstein files. Absolutely, let's release them. I signed a thing called a discharge petition today, which is a measure that can try to force a vote if it gets enough signatures, force a vote on the floor of the House of Representatives to do that. I know there was a subpoena that passed out of one of the committees, the Oversight Committee, and there's been some release there, but release the files. I don't know why anyone's interested in protecting rich and powerful abusers of children. I don't know why anyone would want to do that. Let's release the files. I don't really care who's named in there. I think this is not a complicated thing.
Thank you, Congressman. And thank you to everyone who has submitted questions so far. Again, if you would like to submit a question, simply press *3 on your keypad. And if you would like to join the Congressman's e-newsletter, simply press *6. I'd like to quickly share the results of our second poll question. Many of you answered regarding what's on your mind and would like to hear about on tonight's call. 8% answered the economy, costs, and jobs. 38% answered corruption and trust in government. 16% answered civil rights and public safety. 16% answered healthcare. 4% answered education. 7% answered immigration. 5% answered foreign affairs and defense. And 6% answered other. Thank you to everyone who participated. And again, as a reminder, if you would like to ask a question, simply press *3 on your keypad. And if you would like to join the Congressman's e-newsletter, please press *6. Our next question comes from Paul, who is the mayor of Churchill, and he has a request. Congressman, he would like you to introduce legislation, so that local police departments are able to use radar.
Mayor, thanks for popping in and appreciate the idea. We'll work with you on that. This may be a state issue too, so we'll dig in and we'll talk to you. And look, like one of the things I've been successful at is in each of these appropriation cycles every year, the spending bills of helping get our local communities and our local first responders and cops federal funding. So I'll keep doing that. I'll work with you, Mr. Mayor, my legislative team to see what we can do here. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. We have another question submitted online. This one comes from Rianne, who asks, what is being done to protect federal workers and federal workers' union rights?
Thank you for the question, and I will tell you, not enough. I'm someone who is furious that this administration has tried to take away the collective bargaining rights of so many federal workers. I mean, there are so many in the region, hundreds, who have had these rights stripped away, and there's fights in the courts, certainly, to try to restore those rights. But this is part of a broader attack on working people that I see out of this administration, attacks on the basic freedom to collectively bargain and to form and join a union. There are workers in our region responsible for things like health and safety and research that our miners rely on, that do work around safety research, masks and respirators, black lung disease screening. Many of them have lost their jobs. There have been hundreds of thousands of federal workers that President Trump has fired, again, affecting things like the VA, security at the airports, Department of Education, Centers for Disease Control, including things like the World Trade Center Health Program from post 9/11. This is just kind of crazy stuff. And look, anyone who's affected by any of these orders trying to strip workers, of course, talk to your union, if you've got counsel there with the union, please talk to those guys for advice. But I think it's dangerous stuff because I talked earlier the question about veterans health care, VA, for instance. Those are the people we're talking about, many of whom are veterans themselves. And I could tell you stories. You pick the department in our government, but these are people who are serving honorably, who've now had basic rights stripped away to try to bargain for a contract and decent pay and benefits. I know that AFGE in particular, which represents a lot of federal workers, has been involved in litigation over both mass firings and trying to restore some of these long-held labor rights that I think American workers have earned for a long time. I'm going to continue to try to push, whether it's legislative options, letters pushing back on this, standing with workers. I've rallied with a bunch of them to restore those collective bargaining rights. I'll give you another example. Homeland Security stripped collective bargaining rights from TSA workers. That includes the couple hundred or so who work at Pittsburgh International Airport, represented by AFGE. They're affected by this attack on workers' rights. These are our neighbors. As I said, a lot of veterans. I don't expect, to be candid, some of my Republican colleagues to stand with me and others who are trying to stand up for basic workers' rights here and make sure our government is run well, professionally. But I hope they change their mind. And until then, I'm going to keep fighting. And if there's a different majority in the Congress next year, well, we'll do something about it.
Thank you, Congressman. Our next question was also submitted online, and this one comes from Rachel K. Rachel asks, what can Congress do to support public health as RFK Jr. dismantles the HHS and CDC? And in particular, how can we ensure we still have access to vaccines?
Well, let's start with, I don't think the Senate ever should have confirmed RFK to be the secretary. I serve in the House, I'm not in the Senate, but I don't think they should have confirmed him. And I think that's clear as day given what he's been doing. And let's talk about some of the things he has done. He's fired all the members of the Vaccine Advisory Board at the CDC, at the Centers for Disease Control. And then he named a bunch of new members. A bunch of them have fought against safe vaccines that are backed up by science. I think it's dangerous. We've seen things like measles outbreaks, which can be really scary to young parents especially. I think I'm still young, but I'm a young dad. I got 4 kids. This worries me, as you can imagine. I've got a pretty young one, less than a year old at home. Look, let's follow science, not weird conspiracy theories that RFK and others are peddling. I also got to tell you, I'm proud of Governor Shapiro here, who's been pushing back on this and also taking action for us in Pennsylvania. He's announced a state measure to protect our ability to get safe vaccines in Pennsylvania, to look to standards beyond the CDC, to look at things like the Academy of Pediatrics, the Academy of Family Physicians, the FDA, while Secretary Kennedy, RFK, is dismantling the CDC. He has tried to fire the director. I believe he tried to do it over Twitter. That's led to an exodus of pretty professional folks in the leadership resigning because of his attempts to meddle and weaken what has been traditionally one of the strongest public health entities in the world. And now I'm hearing doctors and physicians and others who are worried about whether they can even trust the CDC guidelines and are pushing folks to pay closer attention to the groups I mentioned, some of the physicians groups instead. That's dangerous stuff. And so, again, I applaud Governor Shapiro here for doing something concrete to protect us and to protect vaccines in Pennsylvania. But, there'll be lots of people in lots of states that don't have that kind of leadership who are going to suffer because of this. It's dangerous stuff. And if there's an outbreak of something or of several preventable diseases in one state, I'm sure there's a risk it could affect all of us, and certainly in Pennsylvania. So I'm going to keep pushing back here. And again, I don't think this guy ever should have been given the position he's in to be a secretary who could have such power and do such damage to our public health.
Thank you, Congressman. Our next question was also submitted online. This one comes from David. David says the Pentagon awarded a $1.2 billion contract to a firm that has never had such a large contract. The Pentagon will not release information about the contract. What can you do to ensure proper oversight of the contract that takes place?
David, appreciate the question. I'd love if you'd be willing to contact my office and I can learn more about the specifics here and see what I can do to dig in. Look, a big part of my job on the Armed Services Committee is oversight for the Pentagon. I do a lot to dig in and make sure that we're not getting ripped off. I think people probably know there's a lot of waste there. There's not much competition by the defense contractors. They've so often been off budget, off schedule, delivering goods, equipment, systems that don't work the way they're supposed to. It's a real and major problem. And so love to learn more about what you saw here. So if you would, please contact my office and we'll do some digging and see what we can find out and what the heck can be done. So thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. We have another question from online submitted by Scott, and he asks, what are you doing about fighting against the big, beautiful bill?
Well, I'll start with I voted against this thing. I'm sure folks know this was the very partisan bill that President Trump signed a couple months back. It's not that complicated what this bill does, but it's pretty darn bad. It's a bill that takes away health care from a lot of people, food assistance, and a lot more to pay for tax giveaways, some of the richest, most powerful people and corporations ever, and saddling all of us with debt in the process. So I've held public events. I've been talking about this in the media. I've rallied against this bill. I'm going to continue to tell the story of what this bill does. Again, and it's taken away a lot of health care from people who really need it. The estimate is that millions, when you combine the Medicaid cuts and other changes, things like some of the ACA subsidies, you're talking like 14 million people across the country who might lose health care because of this bill. It also made cuts to food assistance programs, food nutrition programs like SNAP. That's tens of thousands of households in our district, Western Pennsylvania, who could be affected here. One of the other parts of this bill that I really don't like, it took away some tax credits from the Inflation Reduction Act. Okay, well, what does that mean? Those are tax credits that have helped American companies and even foreign companies invest in this region. One example is Mitsubishi Electric, which has a big investment in Beaver County to grow a lot of good jobs, I hope. And those tax credits were ripped away. The building trades, national building trades, I mean, we're talking the Boilermakers, the steam fitters, the plumbers, electrical workers, I go on and on. They've called this the biggest job-killing bill in the history of the country. So you don't want to believe me, talk to the guys and gals whose jobs are on the line because of this dumb bill. They are worried they're going to lose work. I heard today from the international president of the Painters Union was briefing us in the Labor Caucus, which I'm a member of today, talking about his members losing jobs in offshore wind work because of some dumb stuff that this administration did that cost good, solid, blue-collar jobs. So I don't like this bill. I think it's pretty reckless. And look, I'm someone who thinks a lot of hardworking people could use a tax cut. I would support that. What I don't support is what this bill did, which was take away health care, kill jobs, all to funnel huge tax giveaways to the richest and most powerful, and in the process, jacking up the debt even more. I think it's reckless. I'm going to keep speaking out about it. And the polling I see, by the way, is that American people do not like this bill. And I think if there's a different majority in the Congress, we ought to repeal the darn thing and go back to square one on a real decent tax cut that's fiscally responsible.
Thank you, Congressman. Our next question comes from Ricky, who joins us from Pittsburgh. Ricky asks, can we get the ICE agents to stop wearing masks?
Ricky, thanks for the question. And I think about this, my goodness, our local cops in our district, Western Pennsylvania, you're in a small town, you probably know your chief. Local cops walk around, you see their faces, they've got a badge and a name on. When I was in Iraq, I had body armor with my name on it, right? So our tradition here is not hiding from the public. So I don't like what I'm seeing, where you've got federal law enforcement being directed to hide their face, to not display a badge or a badge number. I think that goes back to what I said at the earlier part of the tonight's town hall about accountability and transparency. right? We expect our local cops to be out and operating in full public view. That's part of the job. I think both police and members of the public have gotten to expect and see body camera video, right, from arrest activity and the rest, so you can make sure things are done the right way. I think there's now an expectation of that, and what we're seeing here is something altogether different. And so I'm very worried about it. We will continue to try to find ways in the Congress to change what is happening and how this agency is behaving. And again, the kinds of questions I've been asking after ICE activity, in Ambridge in particular a few weeks back, basic questions. Who are you targeting? How many people have you detained? What is their status? What was the basis or their charges? Where are these folks? And I'm getting nothing. I continue to demand basic questions. And again, these are the kinds of questions you would expect a member of Congress, no matter their party, to ask any administration, no matter its party. And I think the lack of transparency here tells me that people don't want to do the right thing. I think that's outrageous and wrong. And I'm going to keep doing everything I can to do my constitutional duty to conduct oversight.
Thank you, Congressman. We have a multi-part question here from two people who are joining us. I think that you'll probably be able to answer this together. John from Shaler asks, do you support paper ballots? Yes or no? What about one-day voting and voter ID? If not, why not? Also on voting issues, Peggy from Deer Lake asks, what is your approach going to be to help people vote by mail? Congressman?
All right, Peggy, I think, and John, thanks for the questions. I think I got them all. Paper ballots was the first. I did a lot of work before I was in Congress to push Pennsylvania to get rid of the old electronic paperless machines in favor of us getting paper ballots. So now you go and vote in Pennsylvania, you've got a paper ballot you can mark by hand, or if you need assistance, you can use what are called ballot marking devices, and it'll print your ballot for you. And those ballots can all get scanned. And if need be, they can be fully audited, sampled, or counted by hand. That's a really important election security measure. It's one I really worked hard on. I testified in the Allegheny County Board of Elections some years back on this to push for better election security. I don't think it's a partisan thing, and we had support at the time from people across the political spectrum to get rid of those old paperless machines so we could have the protection and the security that comes with having paper ballots for every ballot cast. And I'll tell you, something you mentioned and you asked about voter ID, there should be good guards in our voter registration system. I tried to offer an amendment to a bill that my Republican counterparts offered up earlier this year that they voted on the floor that said everyone in the country who's eligible to vote, who's a citizen, would get a form of national ID they could use for voting, and they wouldn't even give me a vote on that amendment. You got to ask why. Because if you're serious about election security and talking a big game about voter ID, you'd think you'd give us a vote on something like that, that would say everyone who's eligible could get a free ID they could use. And so I think that shows some not seriousness about caring about the security of our elections. I think the other question from Peggy was about mail voting, which I think has been a good and decent option in Pennsylvania, that now you can get on the list to request a mail ballot. In Allegheny County in particular, they've had drop-box sites around the county in addition to be able to mail it in or take it into the County Board of Elections. I think that we've got to have good, convenient, safe, and secure options for folks to vote, whether they're voting on Election Day in person, whether they're getting that mail ballot in the mail, or whether they're taking that ballot in on Election Day to cast their ballot in person. And part of this, look, I worked before I was in the Congress on election security. One of the most important things you can do if you care about election security is have good, secure, and accurate voter registration lists, good data sharing between the states and government agencies, good automatic voter registration systems are all about keeping the rules current and up to date, catching when people move out of jurisdictions, they want to update their registration. That's all about keeping accurate rolls and having more secure systems as a part of that. You got to have top-notch cybersecurity. I don't think it's reasonable or fair to expect someone who works for county elections to be a frontline cyber warrior on the battle lines with nation-state adversaries, and that's what's happening. So I think there's got to be more federal support There's been federal election security money spent over the years. I think that's got to continue because, again, this is the heart of how we govern ourselves as our elections. And they've got to be safe and secure. We've got to be able to show they're worthy of our trust. And having good cybersecurity is a big, big part of that. We know from years past of efforts to not just attack voter registration and other systems, but to attack vendors that often provide services or equipment to election officials. So it's got to be an all-of-government approach, and we cannot expect local governments to shoulder this burden on their own. They've got to have help from the federal government.
Thank you, Congressman. And thank you to everyone who is still on the line or has submitted a question. We have time for just one more question tonight. This question is an anonymous question, and this says, my husband is an 80-year-old Air Force veteran. George W. Bush changed the requirements for benefits, but 2 years ago, he became eligible. He finally got them. I'm now worried that Trump is taking away benefits. Can you share if you think he will?
Well, number one, I hope you'll contact my office so we can help if there is something going on where benefits are at risk. Number one, and that's anyone, any veteran, anyone who's dealing with federal agencies. Please call the office so we can help you. If there's anything we can do, we will do it. No one should be taking away earned benefits. What I'm very worried about at VA is these efforts to cut staff that I talked about, to outsource so much, will put at risk those benefits really showing up. And again, I think these issues to me are about paying the cost of war. Right? When you send Americans to serve and fight, there's a bargain there that says, you're going to earn some hard-earned benefits and care when you come home. And again, I think you ask people in our part of the world, they expect our government to deliver on that promise. I'm committed to that, believe me. I'll do everything I can, and you will hear from me if we start seeing any effort in Washington to whittle away or erode benefits. But I think the firings, the privatization risks I've talked about, those are all creeping steps that do put at risk care and benefits or could weaken the quality of care. And I think we should be doing the opposite. We should be strengthening care at the VA, which I know can be better. I'll push them to be better, but there are good and decent people there who really want to take care of my fellow veterans and provide the best care possible. We got to give them the resources they need to do it.
Thank you, Congressman. With that answer, it looks like we do have time for one more. Our last question for real this time comes from Darlene, who asks, what are you going to do to fight crony capitalism?
Oh, crony capitalism. What a crock, huh? I mean, look, I think what you see, I talked about corruption a lot. It's something I'm worried about. And I think you see the corruption in what goes on in a lot of our economy, right? And let's start with, what are people feeling? I think people feel like they're squeezed, whether you're in retirement, whether you got young kids, your paycheck doesn't go as far. I mean, you ask almost anyone from any stage of life, it feels like life has gotten more expensive and more of a ripoff. And I'm 41. I feel young, whatever that makes me, I don't know. But you're my age or younger, you now don't expect to do better off than your parents. And that goes to the heart of the American dream, which was an expectation that you could. And so I think, look, what are my basic values? How do I see this country and our government? That if you work hard, play by the rules, you got to be able to have the American dream. You got to be able to afford your life, have a roof over your head, retire with some dignity, pay your bills, my goodness, go to the doctor when you're sick, take a vacation, get your kids to school and care if they need it. Like, that's the basic stuff our government's got to deliver. And I don't think people are asking for handouts. They're asking for, when they're working hard, our government respects that. And this isn't just me talking about the American dream being slipped or ripped away. That's not the right way to talk about it. There are villains here who have taken it away from us, from all of us. There are powerful corporations that throw their weight around in Washington that put favored interest in things in bills. They craft a whole legislative agenda that is not about helping hardworking people. It's about juicing and protecting their profits. That consolidation hurts businesses and small businesses. It hurts workers. It hurts anyone who's a customer or consumer. It hurts all of us. It's also been bad for growth, right? I think it's not good to have bad competition. And we know a lot of ways consolidation has hurt people. We see it at the grocery store. You see it at the pharmacy, which I talked about. It also leads to problems in our supply chains. I mean, we had the baby formula market where you've got 3 or so companies control around 90%. With one factory had a problem, and it led to chaos. Empty store shelves, parents really worried whether they could get formula for their kids, and it was even worse for any parents whose kids needed more specialty formula. So, look, I'm fighting a different economic fight against this. My colleagues and I, who I'm trying to work with here, this idea of economic patriotism, of fighting hard against this corruption so that folks can earn and live a life with dignity. It means more competition. It means a pro-worker, pro-small business way for government to operate. I'll give you one example of this. This idea called price discrimination. You know what? It's illegal under American law, a law called the Robinson-Patman Act, to have huge companies demand price discounts relative to smaller buyers. The idea is to put smaller businesses on equal footing, and yet it's almost never enforced. I think it's how so many small businesses get jammed. It's just one example of a way we got to stand up for more competition that can bring down costs for people and give small businesses a chance. I could go on, but I hope what you understand is this is a fight that I think goes to the heart of what our government's going to be. It's not just enough to call out that problem. We got to call out who is behind that problem and how their money goes and distorts politics. And so your question about crony capitalism, I think, goes right to the heart of the corruption that I see down in Washington and the fight we got to take to beat these guys back so there is muscle in the American dream.
Thank you for that, Congressman. This brings us to the end of Congressman Deluzio's town hall. Thank you, everyone, for participating and joining us this evening. If you have a question that wasn't answered, or if you need assistance from a federal agency, please go to the contact page on his website at deluzio.house.gov. You can also call the Congressman's office at 412-344-5583. Again, that phone number is 412-344-5583. We also invite you to continue to stay in touch with Congressman Deluzio through social media at Rep. Deluzio or by subscribing to his e-newsletter. You can sign up for his e-newsletter on his website. Now, I'll turn it over to Congressman Deluzio for some closing remarks and anything else that he'd like to add.
All right, thank you, sir, and thanks everybody for coming on tonight. Looks like we got about north of 10,000 folks came on. That's awesome. Thank you for joining me tonight. I'll keep working hard for us. I'm going to remain guided by the values that I think make our part of the world so special: hard work, patriotism, sacrifice. I'm going to stay focused on fighting corruption, bringing down costs, bringing back that American dream that I know we all want and work hard for. Look, I want to highlight, you've heard some of the services my offices can provide. One that I'm really proud of, I get to nominate young people to our service academies. The Naval Academy, where I graduated from, West Point Air Force, Merchant Marine Academy. Those applications are due on September 30th. They're coming up. The application's on the website. Please don't miss that. And as always, let me and my team know if you need any help with any federal agency. If you need a tour, if you happen to visit Washington, if you'd like a flag flown in honor of someone, please don't be shy. So you can also, of course, stay connected and updated my work. You can subscribe to my e-newsletter, follow the social media channels, whatever makes sense for you. My job is to fight for all of us from Western Pennsylvania. My office is here to serve all of us. I know there's a lot of work to get done. There are big challenges ahead. I'm sure I wasn't able to answer every question that came in tonight with more than 10,000 folks on, but I hope we'll keep the conversation going. You're welcome to call my Washington office or one of my district offices. Share your thoughts, ask a question, ask for help. You can check it out on the website, deluzio.house.gov. The D.C. office, that's 202-225-2301. At home in the district, 412-344-5583. Please don't be shy about asking for help or let me know what's on your mind. Thank you for tuning in. Hope to talk to you soon. Have a great night.